day in the center of Beijing when a man walked to the middle of the Avenue of Eternal Peace.
Well, all right. Welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Today, well, we're going to talk Civil War. There's been a lot of talk. I say a lot of talk, a little talk all over Twitter. I guess it's a lot on Twitter, a little bit in the rest of America. You know, Twitter, there's all the Russian bots, so they keep it going, They
you gotta keep things amped up.
You got to keep things going. So what happened is about a week and a half ago, New York jury convicted Donald Trump of 34 felony counts for falsification. Now, right out of the gate, let me talk about that for a second. 34 counts, but what he did is he did one thing. He lied one time and then wrote 34 checks. So they're like, well, each time he wrote a check, he made that lie bigger. I guess. To me, that's kind of ridiculous. But whatever.
Well, it's about campaign contributions. Keeping money out of politics is the biggest.
Right.
Yeah,
I hear
is the biggest problem in the United States.
Right. But it's the same as the whole like Capone thing. Well, we got him for mail fraud every time he, it just is like, well, but that's because you couldn't do it any other way. I bet you they had somebody. They were like, well, how did we get Capone when we had no evidence? Oh, we had to think outside the box.
You got to think outside the box.
People felt.
But you can also not break the law. And that's also a possibility.
This is America. We do what we want.
Rich people don't have to suffer consequences for breaking the law.
Exactly. So I don't know. There was a bunch of stuff on Twitter, a bunch of, Trump's, I don't know, just calling for civil war and saying, we need, civil war. But I don't think people really know what that means. I don't think.
I think that's reasonable.
The concept of what civil war is. Now,
Russian bots probably do.
Exactly. We're going to talk about why, like, Americans are pissed, because I think there's a lot of legitimate concerns that people have. There is a pretty good divide and in America right now. Now, I believe that the news and social media may be making that divide bigger, amplifying it. I think Russian bots and everybody else pissed at us. Democrat.
Yeah, and everybody knows that rage bait sells.
Right. AI may be trying to bring down America. I can't really be sure, I do want to say before we get too far into it, make sure you guys like and subscribe, because we don't want you to miss a thing, and we appreciate you being here. But here is the case I would make, right? And again, you may be on different sides of some of these issues. We don't all have to agree on everything. But giving tons of money that we don't have to Ukraine, all right? That has people a little bit concerned, all right? That's a thought. The schools appear to be a little bit overrun with crazy. At least that's how it's portrayed on social media. I don't know what the reality is. I don't have little kids in school. I do know I keep hearing statistics. And again, it could be stuff to just get people hyped up or whatever. But 30% of kids in elementary school don't know what gender they are. So that would concern people, right? Now, that's probably in California. That's probably California, and the rest of the country, we're like, we don't know what you're talking
about. It's 90% in California, and everybody else is fine. But
but that's whatever, people are confused. All right. But people feel like, hey, you're taking my tax dollars. I can't spend them where I want. And you're like, to pay for private. You send all my money to Ukraine, I have nothing left, right? But aside of that, that's not really exactly how it works. But if you understand inflation, it kind of makes sense. All right, the endless money printing, right? Inflation, we're all kind of noticing it. And I don't know if you guys are following the news as much, but Saudi Arabia has basically off the gold-backed dollar thing. So that's kind of a big deal that's going to affect things dramatically in the very near future. And I feel like people are waiting for them to make a move so they can make a move, because turns out foreign governments who go away from the gold-backed dollar have a way of finding themselves dead. It's kind of like when you the Clintons, it's the same type of thing, right? You just wake up dead one morning, who knows?
Yeah.
Gaddafi, Saddam, there's a few. Anyway, red flag laws. I feel like maybe other people aren't as bothered by red flag laws as I am, but to me, that's like a personal affront against like the Constitution and, just everything in general is like, hey, you have no rights. I'm just going to take away your shit. And then you can come up with a reason why I should give them back. To me, that's pretty big encroachment, right? Congressional insider trading, right? All these guys getting rich. Hunter's laptop. Now, I know Hunter got convicted for some stupid gun and drug charges and whatever. And realistically, probably what would have happened to anybody. I don't think it was more lenient because of him being Biden's guy or whatever. But, well, being a Biden, right? We could put it that way.
Yeah.
But the thing is, what about that laptop with all that kind of bigger conspiracy, stuff? Nothing, People are like, oh, guy we lost.
They said it passed through so many hands that nobody can confirm that he, was involved with any of the stuff that's on there could have been put on there by anybody, and that's why it's like
because the
not
FBI
considered evidence, but whatever.
Yeah, the FBI doesn't know anything about chain of custody or how to do that, right? They could have done anything with it.
Yeah.
All right. So that's where I'm at on that. Now, I do want to, let me see. I do wonder that people don't really know, like, they don't get motivated for things. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, my biggest point here is I don't think civil war will happen because people don't really react to stuff and they're a bunch of cowards. I'm just saying. I'm calling out, I just, hey, now I'm not encouraging civil war because I don't think it's the right answer. And I'm going to lay out a case for that in the end here. But I also, I don't want to say that I think it would even happen because I think people are slow to react on things. I guess my big one is, do you guys remember Edward Snowden? It turns out this guy risked everything, basically committed treason. It's kind of like our founding fathers committed treason. It's you go all out and either you're a hero or you're a villain. And pretty much we took him as a villain because the people didn't have his back. It's all about reading the rest of the population, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the government has fucking you over and spying on you, and Americans are like, yeah, I know. That's fine. That's fine. I'm going to just keep electing the same asshole to Congress. That's fine.
Do I play a clip? I have a 2-minute clip of Snowden, but is that too long? Will everyone panic on me?
Nope.
Do it?
I want to hear it.
We want to hear Snowden? All right. So here's Snowden a little bit after.
To see is if you could give me a yes or no answer to the question, does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect, but not wittingly.
All right.
So that was a lie. Wyden knew it was a lie. Clapper knew it was a lie. He actually admitted it was a lie after I came forward, 3 months later. But he said it was the least untruthful thing he could think of to say in the context of being in the hot seat there. But what does it mean for a democracy when you can lie under oath to Congress, and the congressman even knows you're lying to them, but they're afraid to correct you? And Wyden, by the way, it wasn't a surprise. Wyden gave him those questions 24 hours in advance, And he wrote a letter afterwards asking for Clapper to amend his testimony, right? Not even at a press conference, but just say this was incorrect, whatever, so he could go through the legal process and show his fellow congressmen that there was a problem and that they needed to do it. But all of that was refused to us. All of it was denied to us. And here I am, sitting at the NSA, next to my buddies who I've talked to about these programs. I've gone, look at this, and they're laughing at it. I'm laughing at it. And it's not that we go, oh, ha, 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 he's getting away with it. It's like, what are you going to do? These guys are, they're bullshitters. The system is built on lies. That even many people, many experts who have studied this know are lies. But if you can't prove they are lies, how do you move beyond that?
That's pretty much. I mean, he laid out the whole PRISM thing. You guys remember this? Social media.
Mhm.
Everything you do is being recorded and put together, right? All your comments on the internet and all that stuff are compiled to build a profile of you. And this guy laid it out for everybody. And we're all like, yeah, we're good with it. He's a traitor. And that's one of the things like that make me kind of more excited about Kennedy these days is, Kennedy said day one, he would pardon Snowden. And he's like, this guy's a hero. And then, whereas it's funny because Trump is like, yeah, he's a traitor. And I'm like, oh, and everybody's kind of behind Trump. And I'm like, but how is this guy a traitor? Trump was down for red flag laws, Now, obviously, personally, when I look at Biden versus Trump, I think Trump looks like a lot more of the boxes are checked in what I believe versus what, Biden believes. But I don't know. I find that concerning. Another thing would be, you guys probably don't remember, but in 2020, we shut down all kinds of businesses and stuff for no apparent reason or maybe a reason that we're not allowed to mention on YouTube. But, that kind of thing. They screwed up businesses. They kind of destroyed our economy. And I believe by doing that kind of hastened inflation to come along.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all those checks they sent out to every single person in the United States, they just printed that stuff up. That's what was it, $14 trillion? Just pump it into the economy. It's fine.
Easy go, right? And then they're like, yeah, everybody's got jobs now. We're making more jobs than ever. Well, because everybody has 3 jobs just to get by. But we won't talk about that.
Yeah.
So the Patriot Act, I don't know if you guys, that one, Patriot Act was a big hit for me. I was like, oh, this is kind of a big violation. That kind of opened up everything for PRISM and all that.
But Chuck, it's called Patriot. Aren't you a patriot?
Ooh,
Aren't you patriotic? It's called the Patriot Act, which must mean it's good for us.
So that, I guess, is my argument of kind of why I think people are pissed off, why they're kind of divided, why they feel like, and I think they want to paint it as left and right. And I don't see it that way. I see it as a government and not government. It's the government and the people, not very different from the Revolutionary War. When we rebelled against England, it was an oppressive government. Now, I know you're saying, well, there's Democrats and there's Republicans and they hate each other. But I like to think that a lot of the people who are in line with the current government are just kind of shills for government and just do what they're told.
Right.
Am I wrong on this, Kevin? Talk to me.
No. I mean, fact of the matter is that if you think there's a civil war coming, you already lost. You already lost that civil war.
You're not paying
attention. Because you're thinking that the war is between you and other Americans.
Right.
But that's not really the case. The war is between the government and the citizens. And you think that it's your fucking lefty tree hugger hippie neighbor that's causing you all these problems. He doesn't have anything to do with it. Yeah. He just wants to get high and mind his own business. He wants to teach his kid that, gender is fluid and all that sort of bullshit and whatever, dude. That doesn't have any impact on me. what has an impact on me is my money not buying a goddamn thing anymore. They say that it's, you know, inflation. It's only going up, you know, 5%, 8%, but the cost of living is increased by 20%. That's not inflation. They don't count that, you know? When your groceries are more expensive, they're going a lot up faster than inflation is. Your electric bill is going up faster than inflation is. So, you know, your day-to-day living expenses are skyrocketing and way past what inflation is.
Yes. And then your employer's like, yeah, 3% raise. I got your back. And you're like,
Right.
do you? Because you're charging more than 3%.
Yeah, your costs went up more than 3%.
Yeah. No, it's a crazy world. So this is kind of part 2 here. Now that we're all pissed off and we all hate each other, but like I said, I kind of feel like it's just an oppressive government. I don't hate my fellow Americans, right? I don't have a big problem. I mean, you know, there's a lot of things that Kevin just pointed out, and really we're just talking about California where they're all crazy. Kevin, you're up in the icy New York there. Are they a little crazy up there?
Yeah, they're all crazy here too.
They're crazy there too. So, all right, I'll give you those 2 states, right?
I was actually talking to my my neighbor the other day, and I was looking at him, and something was off, and I realized like it was the shirt he was wearing. Bro, you didn't get that in the men's section. I don't know what's going on in your life, but you and I, we might live near each other, but you and I aren't, you know, we don't think the same way. So, I mean, it's one of those things. We can run through a list real quick. I want to run through a list real quick on causes or things that happened before Civil War in the modern world in maybe not related to the United States. Maybe some of them are, but this is the chief reasons for Civil War in the past, 50 years. Political deprivation, such as colonial subordination. So there are a lot of colonies that were run by countries, it was basically the same reason we had the Civil War. After World War II, a lot of colonies were like, nah, we ain't into this anymore, and caused civil wars. Lack of political rights, also one of the reasons why we had the American Revolution. Low incomes, that's going on right now. Poor growth and large populations, it's happening right now. Unaccountable leaders, that's happening right now.
It does happen.
Some of the other main ones, ethnic dominance, or large ethnic populations that are opposed to each other. That's not really happening, I don't think.
Maybe talk about illegal immigration as a big upsetting factor in that.
Right. That makes sense.
I mean, it's not in the way we traditionally think it, but people, in a way, it's tied, right? I mean, there's a difference, but there's no difference in the people. It's just that, hey, there's those guys and these guys, in that aspect, we have that going on.
Yeah. And the last one I got here is actually, it's kind of interesting. It's charismatic leaders.
Oh.
So charismatic leaders who would be like, we all know charismatic leaders, but people that will point out things that seem mundane and make them out to be like the worst crisis in the world, or the best thing that's ever happened. And if only we could go back to the old ways where everything was great, And it's that sort of shit where you're just painting stuff to depict the point you're trying to make, whether it's factual or not.
Right. You make it into a darker shape. And, I mean, I try and be careful to not do that kind of thing on the show. We're not here to escalate tensions, but we also, sometimes you feel like you have to be a little theatrical or dramatic to get your point across, because people are like, yeah, you're just complaining about something else. And, I don't want to be Alex Jones, right? Who's out there crying on the, oh, come on, it's the babies and, whatever. But it's, or Glenn Beck for that matter, right? He used to cry all
There's
the
a lot
time.
of fucking crybabies on. I don't know how you get on the fucking, get so popular if you're fucking breaking down and crying every 5 minutes.
Maybe that's why we're not as popular as we should be.
we need to start crying during our show.
Start shedding tears if we're going to really step up our game, But that's all right. Hey, that's how it is sometimes. Yeah. But also, it's just, we are I mean, we're divided, but I feel like the news and social media and, Twitter, all these things do escalate it and kind of aggravate it and make us more divided against each other.
Yeah.
But what does civil war really look like in the United States? Like, how would this even play out? Now, I see about 3 different scenarios in my mind. One, I see people kind of trying to get a little crazy. You end up with things like like we had the riots and destroying cities out in the left coast there,
Mhm.
where they're burning things and going through and just destruction. Now that's
Yeah.
not helping anything. You're just out there destroying your community, and that's just
Mhm.
bad
Yeah,
business.
that happened in '92 in LA. It happened in was it St. Paul? Was it St. Paul, Minnesota? A couple of years back. That was where they burned the police station down. That's the one I'm thinking of. Maybe it wasn't St. Paul. Maybe it was one of the cities near there. Then there was also issues over in Baltimore. Every once in a while, shit gets hot and people fucking go crazy.
And they go crazy. Sometimes the government has to take a helicopter and drop a bomb on a house to let people know their place.
Sometimes, yes,
Whatever.
sometimes they do that.
Whatever. They're like, hey, you guys need to check yourself.
Hmm.
All right. But so there's that. I think if those riots I don't imagine, if they're smart, I don't imagine the government would play around. If that stuff, if you started having riots popping up all over the place and some kind of organized crazy, and organized just by happening in a bunch of different places at the same time.
Right.
And I'm sure George Soros would be somewhere funding it, with his creepy bloodshot
Yeah.
eyes and, you know how it is.
How is he
right?
still alive? I don't even understand this.
he's
He's
a
been the
creep.
boogeyman for like 40 years.
It's always like, oh, but that Soros guy, yeah,
Mhm.
he'd be sending checks. Hey,
Yeah.
if you go attack this place, go start a fire in the trash can out here.
Mhm.
I imagine you'd end up with some kind of martial law and government kind of come crack down, and they'd roll through with something with 50 cal machine guns on the roof and hey, back in the house, kind of like they
Yeah.
did in Boston. If you guys remember after the Boston Marathon, they just kind of like locked it down. That's how I
Everybody's
imagine
locked
it
down.
playing
Yeah.
out. And I think you'd have a little brutality right in the get-go, and that'd shut people right down.
Yeah.
That's
Usually you
scenario
crack a
one.
couple heads and that things wrap themselves up.
However, I think once you get those tightened reins from the government, I think those reins never get loosened.
Right.
Right? Once they're like, oh, we had to take control. You guys are crazy. You can't behave yourselves. Well, this is our opportunity to.
Yeah.
So it's
Well, it's
kind
been
of
it's been like that, baby steps for the past 200 years in this country,
the
Baby
Patriot
steps.
Act, right?
Yeah.
It's, these are each is a giant leap, right? So
Mhm.
first we have the Patriot Act of, hey, now we could just randomly come up to you on the street and be like, hey, who are you? What are you doing here? Well, it doesn't matter who I am. I'm just a guy on the street and what I'm doing. What crime did I commit? Well, that
Mhm.
doesn't matter anymore. You're thinking of America 20 years ago.
Right.
This is America now. And, and so we just keep getting a little bit more infringement. Then you end up, we hugely escalated the surveillance state. And, China is really like a model example, whether, we're looking at it as that or not. They're kind of, people with their social credit score and their kind of thing.
That to me is the most terrifying thing in the world.
Right? That is
know?
1984. If you guys read that book and you
Yeah.
see kind of the control in police state, or even there's that, The Handmaid's Tale or something, all
Yep.
these warning novels from back when you were a kid in school and you were like that weird utopian, crazy.
Mhm.
But now it turns out we're like right on the cusp. And I feel like the government may just be waiting for the opportunity. Like, hey, look, they stepped up. We had to do it. We had no choice. They were crazy. They were hurting each other.
Right.
We had
Right.
to protect you. And then don't worry, they'll rewrite history to show that it was all, you were crazy and they weren't. And, actually, I think me and Kevin get a page in the history book. Like you'll see like this screenshot right here.
Mhm.
And you'll be like, yep, those two. They were the ones.
They were the ones that
They
kicked
were the
everything
ones
off.
instigating everything. They were actually writing podcasts or talking about Civil War and encouraging the people. And that's not what we're doing. I'm laying out reality here of, one, why people are pissed, but two, how it might play out. And I don't see that ending well if it goes that way. Now,
I've got another scenario.
I have several. All
right. Well, maybe this matches up to one of yours, but this is a quote from Policy Horizons Canada. This is a think tank in Canada talking about the United States.
So
large scale
think up in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Large scale civil collapse need not involve the concerted efforts of a critical mass of people. Purposeful militias are not required. Only spiraling acts of violence by small numbers of people that may originate spontaneously, but are fueled by retribution. So basically, one side does one fucked up thing, and then the other side does another fucked up thing, but they're not doing it to each other. They're doing it to, people in general, So one bomb over here and one bomb over there, and before you know it, everybody's, threatening to murder each other.
Exactly. No, it gets crazy. I think, yeah, I see it as you have a lot of crazy, and crazy always seems to take over, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
You have the people who are like, well, I have the balls to go do something. Well, is that the guy, your buddy who has the balls to go do something? Is that the guy you want making the decision?
Right. Exactly.
Remember, America had crazy. We had like Sam Adams was all in, right? This guy's down for like tarring and feathering and whatever. He's like, we're going to get those British and whatever. But then you had people like John Adams and George Washington and Jefferson, who were like way reserved conservative. And somehow the people were smart enough to say, let's put the reserved conservative in charge, right? By having George Washington and stuff in charge. And then we'll have them harness and unleash the dogs of war whenever it's appropriate.
Right.
And that's what you need. You can't have the dogs of war in charge.
Right. Because then the war never ends.
The war never ends. And it's, full on crazy. You need to say,
it's kind of what happened in the French Revolution. They started cutting off the heads of all the, the elite, the royal families and, that sort of stuff. But then they just kept chopping heads, man. The guy that was leader yesterday is an enemy of the state today.
That's it. And they just keep, and that's the thing. So I think it escalates. But now I would also ask, do you still have electricity, right? When you're having this civil war, when everybody's kind of, hey, everything's going on except for where we're having battles. Right. Do you still have internet? Does communication and stuff like that go down? Are there still cell phones? Because to me, if I'm in a government, I'm shutting that down, right? You're not going to have cell service. You're not going to have internet service. Now, maybe Elon's hooking us up with the Starlink and like they did in Ukraine. But if I can shut down communications between everybody, then I can roll into your town and be like, look, you guys are the only ones doing this. You all are going to jail for life. Everybody else, they're already at peace and settled. And you're the only problem. We're going to rein you guys in because you're the crazy rabble rousers. And everyone will be like, oh, okay. Well, you're willing to pardon me if I just stop right now and just have to go to a detention camp for a couple months? Okay. Well, I'll do that because, I was a little off my rocker there.
Right.
And then you have that in every town.
It's not your fault. You were caught up in the riot, dude. Everybody else was doing it. I was just, groupthink, man. It wasn't my fault.
I could forgive you. Go into these showers we set up over here. Don't mind the big gas tanks outside.
Yeah.
They have not. We just trying to keep the building warm. All right. It's just about good heat in there because you want a hot shower, right? Yeah. That's right. Don't even worry about it. Just go on in, get cleaned up. I'll make you. I got some McDonald's in the back, and we're gonna take care of you. That's how that's the smart play from the government. And then they could have the whole totalitarian. Now, obviously, when I say the smart play from the government, that implies that I believe the government just wants to control you and be in charge of everything.
What? What?
That's the whole thing. That's where it gets crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't, it's only when the government wants to take control and, and rule things. I don't know. That's my thought. Now, so I see DHS going and rounding up all the known people. And these are people who are downloading our podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
God forbid people who host podcasts like this, right? People who put it all on the line. And in a way, I think that's something we do. I think we put it on the line. It's funny. I did a show over the week or during the week, a couple days ago, I think on Monday, where, I talked to a guy and he's like, well, why do you do the podcast? And what about OPSEC? And somehow the two like merged together when we were talking.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, here's the thing. There are certain people who are called to step up and do the right thing. There's one thing if your goal is safety and security, and there's another of doing the right thing. And I feel like that's my goal, is to do the right thing, to go out and, share the truth and get as many people as I can prepared so that they, end up really building something great and keep America awesome, and you defend your rights and your freedoms, as opposed to just protecting my own butt. Obviously, I can be a sheep and hide in the corner. Now, again, that doesn't mean be stupid. Don't lay all your cards out on the table. That would be a mistake.
Right.
But it's a good idea to go out, and the more we keep cowing down, being under the thumb of the man, the more that we're backing down to that, the more ground that they gain. And I guess that's where it comes from. You don't want to give them an inch, because the more they can move forward, the more that, they're going to oppress you and control you. And if we're all like, well, hey, nobody else is saying anything, I better not. That's where we get into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I see it is, if we give them too much and let them believe that they're setting the standard, then we're going to get crushed. We need to stand up and be strong. And that's what it's really about. You need personal protection, but you also, and by that, I mean, OPSEC and keeping your mouth shut, but just the same, don't be afraid to be a man. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, they say that I heard a lot of different numbers, but they're saying 41% of Americans believe the U.S. will see a second civil war in the next 5 years. That's, almost half of everybody is saying that in the next 5 years, this is going to be an issue. I don't think that that's going to happen in the next 5 years. I think that we might see some terror attacks, some homegrown terror type stuff. I think we might see, like you said, some big riots. But I don't know how likely actual civil war, like the first Civil War, would happen, or like the movie. I don't think we're in that range yet. Canada is worried about it, though. Canada has started preparing for an American Civil War. Yeah, what they're going to have to do to protect their economy if the United States goes into civil war, which is a little bit crazy. But it says here, Canadian politicians are increasingly concerned about the possibility of another civil war. U.S. ideological divisions, democratic erosion, and domestic unrest escalate, plunging the country into civil war. That's the think tank for Canada, trying to get Canadians to prepare for their crazy southern neighbors.
Yeah, because we don't think that the Canadians are crazy. I gotta say, they have a little unrest going on up there.
They've been having their own issues, right?
They have their own issues. One thing, have you seen? There's a big push with at the moment the UN is
Mhm.
kind of starting to crack down and be like, hey, we need to be able to have extra powers if there's a global emergency. And of course, Biden is like,
Right.
yes,
There's
let's do
always
that.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, and an emergency might be the climate getting too hot. An emergency might be a pandemic of some sort. An emergency might be where if anybody has some kind of civil unrest, then all the nations, the UN, right, would be
Mhm.
called together to stand up together and crack down on everybody. And Biden's like, yes, that's what we need. And it's kind of scary the way things are going, but it's funny because it's not just the jerky Americans that are like, hey, we're not going to go for that. Turns out a lot of Europe is like, hey, we're not going to go for this. You
Mhm.
guys are crazy. And France is having big issues and riots. And hey, we're not going for this crazy. A lot of
Mhm.
people are actually starting to stand up to oppressive governments and
Yeah.
kind of push back a little bit. Now, if people just stay silent and don't say anything, and I'm not trying to get everybody rounded up into a camp, but I decided early on that, hey, I'm already on that list, and it
Mhm.
was, I mean, just being a veteran, right? That we were on that DHS list of
Yep.
potential terrorists. So I'm like,
Mhm.
all right, I already checked that box. And then it's like, oh, well, oh, so you have some tax stamp NFA items, right? Like suppressors and short barrel rifles and things like
Yeah.
that. Oh, check, you're on that box. Oh, you were a Boy Scout. Yep, you're a hooligan. Check that box.
That's a paramilitary group for children, Chuck. Come on.
Exactly. That's practically the Nazi youth, right? I mean,
Yep.
they're out there. Who knows what they're doing?
Helping
Playing with
old ladies
knives,
across the street and stuff.
matches and knives as children. I say no, but that's how it goes sometimes, right? And no, we can't have that. So I'm just saying you need to, be prepared, right? Be a man and say what you need to say and tell people, hey, you know, you need to start getting ready. You need to stand up to what's right. And I'm not saying go and fight a civil war, because also, how does leadership end at the end, right? Who
Mhm.
who gets to be in charge when you overthrow? Now, does that mean then we can have legitimate, fair elections with no parties and no political whatever? That might be the outcome I want. Within the constraints of a constitution that we actually adhere to and follow the rules. Yeah, that might be the rule that I want. But what about everybody else? Is
Mhm.
everybody else on that bandwagon?
Right.
That's what I'm afraid of. It doesn't end. It's just the next guy with money and power who's like, all right, the big government's decimated, whatever. And then China rolls in and is like, all right, you guys are all weak and pathetic now. I'll take charge. I got you,
Right.
and straighten us right out. Or Russia, or
Mhm.
heck, North Korea could come over with
Yeah,
their,
there's a lot of countries that would love to see us fall apart.
yeah. It doesn't end well if you don't think this through. You need a
Mhm.
clear plan. You need leadership. You need people who are going to be in charge, and you need organization. And the bottom line is, we already have so much of a surveillance state that there's no way you could really coordinate something like that without Big Brother already
Mhm.
having their hand in it.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and it ends up being a mess. And I just want to point out to everybody that Civil War probably doesn't end the way you want it to.
No.
Um,
No, not for anybody.
what did we have? 200 or 680,000 people died during the first Civil War.
Yeah, 620,000 I think was the number I
620.
saw.
All
Mhm.
right. And then the population was somewhere, what, 30 million or 13
Yeah,
million?
about 30 million.
30
Yep.
million.
About 2% of the population was killed during the Civil War.
That's not going to end well for people, right?
And how many people had to suffer through food shortages during the meantime? Or, dad's dead now. Good luck getting that figured out, Good luck dealing with that. Your entire city is burned to the ground. Didn't work out well for those people either. Maybe they're not dead, but, they're homeless now.
Right.
So
And then
a lot of
I
that
would
stuff
point out,
doesn't work out as well as some people hope that it does,
No. There's fantasies of, oh, well, it'll then end up the way I want it to, right?
Right.
It'll be the version in my head will be
Mhm.
civil war.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to end in a dictatorship.
Yeah, like I said, there's not too many Sam Adams out there and people who would go and really do battle like they used to. A couple of us old timers, but our knees hurt. So I'm
Mhm.
just saying, who knows? Who knows what you're gonna get?
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. So that's what I got. That's the gist of it. I think it's unlikely, but I also think if something like that were to play out, that it's not going to end the way you want it to. And what that means to me is don't just roll over and give up. It's then something where you need to say to yourself, all right, you know what? I'm going to start getting things ready. I'm going to start standing up to my government. I'm going to start, and I don't mean in a bad way. I mean, just call them out, right? Say things that need to be said. Don't be afraid with your neighbors. Let the
Mhm.
government know. And then when somebody like Snowden comes out and tells the truth, maybe have their back.
Mhm. Yeah.
Maybe because the government saw we didn't have support for it.
Mhm.
When they
So
rolled out,
nobody did anything about it, so they just kept breaking
Yep.
the law.
And they got worse and worse. When
Mhm.
martial law came along in Boston, we were all like, yeah, that's a good idea. We had to catch that guy hiding under that boat,
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole city, shut it down. Well, it
Mhm.
didn't
The
happen
guy who
here,
was
so it wasn't real.
hiding in that boat bleeding to death. Yeah.
Yeah, he would have never died on his own. And I don't mean, obviously it's an awesome thing that we caught him. And I'm glad. And that sends a message to the rest of the world. Hey, we're not going to let you win if you're a terrorist, right?
Right.
We're going to make sure you pay. And don't think you can come mess with America. And I love that attitude. But I also know that we can't give up everything we are in order to, accommodate other people.
Right.
And, to catch something or whatever. You can't lose yourself in order to win the war. All right. So be
Yeah, I
careful.
mean, if 9/11 happened because terrorists hated our freedom, we got the Patriot Act, so I guess they won. I mean, it seems
America,
like that's how it works.
they beat freedom because
Yeah.
we definitely gave up a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, it's an ugly world. So you have thoughts, concerns. One, I'd love to see them in the comments. I'd love to hear what your take is on Civil War and how you think it might play out. But also, I would say that, we need to email us your thoughts, concerns, questions, preppingbadass@gmail.com. Like and subscribe, leave reviews, whatever you can do, help spread the word. I mean, me and Kevin are risking things by putting our information out here for everybody. And I appreciate you sharing it, make it into a monster. And with that, I would say stay safe and we will talk to you guys next week.